Girl,
GirlBye.
girl, bye.
Bye, GirlBye.
Girl, bye. Girl, bye.
Welcome to your safe space, honey. This is GirlBye, the podcast amplifying queer voices and kicking down the doors to so-called normalcy. Get ready for real talk, fierce discussions, and a whole lot of yes, honey. Hi, and welcome to GirlBye, the only podcast on the internet bringing the queer conversation to the so-called norm. Today, our special guest is definitely Mom of the Year, while also showing how living your authentic self can be at any time in your life, and it makes you full and warm inside. Welcome, Anne. Anne, how are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing really good.
I'm so happy to have you on our podcast today. So I'm excited to have somebody on the podcast that's a mom, that is, living authentically yourself, that's having a ball doing it as well. So you're the first mom
Oh,
on the
thank you.
podcast we have had. So welcome.
Wow. Thanks.
So for everybody
That is pretty
listening,
cool.
tell them a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and just, so that they can kind of get up to speed a little bit.
Okay, well, my name is Anne. I live in northern Idaho, and I've pretty much lived here my whole life. I was raised very strict, religious Christian. I did all the things. I was a people pleaser to the max. Um, I got married at a really young age to a man, and even though I knew that I was queer, that was just not something that I was going to be able to pursue. I definitely thought of it as that's a sin. Like, I'm an alcoholic and I'm not going to be able to have a drink. I am queer and I'm not going to be able to pursue that if I want to like actually live for God. So I was actually married for 20 years. Um, I got divorced 3 years ago and I just couldn't do it anymore. I just could not live that way anymore. I had to be myself. I have always tried to be very authentic, and that was like the one thing that I was like completely not authentic ever about. And also having children, I thought was really important for me to show them that that they could be who they needed to be, that they didn't have to like follow a box of who the world wants us to be. And so 3 years ago, I got divorced, and I just came out a year ago. And actually, yeah, I came out about, it was like a Pride last year. It's like this day, like daily coming out. Like you're coming out more and more all the time. But I like came out in this court. I'm in a very conservative area in Idaho, so I didn't even feel like I could come out. It was a very slow process. I'm in a group of liberal
Yeah.
ladies, and I came out in that group. And then I went to Pride with my daughter, and it was just like this slow process. And yeah, I guess that's a little bit
Yeah.
about me.
No, awesome. I think it's a journey. I think no matter when you decide to fully live your authentic self, I think it's a journey no matter what, and every day you're learning more about yourself. And that's the beauty of it. It's that
For
it's a journey
sure.
and we get to
Yeah.
learn little by little as we go, and that's the whole fun in being able to find who you are.
Yeah.
To bring us to the beginning of your childhood, just being a young person, growing up, going to school, when did you feel that you were different from what everybody was telling you to be?
I mean, I always felt different. I never fit in anywhere I ever was, even if it was just because I was really religious. Like as a kid, I like clung to that. And so I was a really weird kid, but had holy water in my closet and but I just
Really?
never fit in anywhere. Oh yeah, I was way into it. Just anything that I can do this, like I can memorize all these prayers and I can be the best version of this. Um, I didn't fit in with kids. I mean, I just knew I was different at a young age. And
Yeah.
then, I mean, I'm 44 years old, so I was part of like Gen X, I was part of the grunge era. And growing up in my small town, nobody else was doing what I was doing with like thrift shopping and just really embracing grunge clothes. I definitely
Yeah.
looked like a queer kid, you know, like, and but we're in the 90s and that was very, really taboo. But if I look back now at pictures of myself, my son, when I came out, was like, Mom, we knew, like, it was obvious. Like, I saw pictures of you in high school, like, I knew you were queer. Like, it's not surprising. And but even just like my group of friends, we were just like all these little queer kids, and we're all like we all are queer now. And even
Yeah.
though we were like so indoctrinated, we were so indoctrinated and we were so caught up in trying to be these good Christian kids, we were judged like because of how we looked, and we could never fit into like the preppy Christian kids. So we are always kind of like
Yeah.
the outcasts, even though my like I was probably the best of the best, but because of my looks and I had short cropped hair and I mean I totally looked like a little lesbian for sure. But I don't know, like I right away
Yeah.
I would say really around 14, 15 was when I started like just feeling even more different. Like I'll never fit in no
Yeah.
matter where I'm at.
Yeah, and when you spent your time kind of in this time and then also in church and trying to kind of dive into that and be really good at being part of that community, what about the church made you want to be so involved?
Well, I mean, obviously there's the fear of being sent to hell. And
Yeah.
I don't know, like I was just raised that way my whole life and for this like black or white, like you have to be completely devoted or you're not there at all. It was very extreme. It wasn't like a love your neighbor kind of theology. It was like if you don't do these things, like you're going to go to hell. So I was just like very afraid of that and afraid of like the end times and like the rapture coming and taking you away and like being told like, well, you're not, you actually weren't doing things right. So like there's an extreme fear. And so
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of it. It's all about control to keep people
Yeah.
following this path. My parents, they were extremely involved. Like we prayed and we read the Bible, and it was even though I went to public school, um, which most of my friends were homeschooled, so I was like the weird one that went to public school. Yeah, I mean, it was just extreme indoctrination, and my parents are indoctrinated, you know, like it just passes
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, and I think most kids, I mean, I don't think kids in general are like lining up to go to church regularly, right? I think they want to be outside
Yeah,
playing or anything other than being
yeah,
forced to like be stuck somewhere. So I definitely think it is something that we pass down from generation to generation on people kind of being in church and being indoctrinated. But as your journey kind of evolved, you come into being an adult. Was there a time frame that you ever found yourself like talking to women or anything in this time frame, or were you like strictly talking to men and that was it, or was until you finally got divorced in that time, or were you kind of like secretly dabbling in?
yeah. So that's a good question. I was 18 years old or 19 years old when I like went to community college, and that was another thing. Like most Christian kids in my age, you don't go to college because that's where you learn all the stuff that takes you away from God. But I was in a class called cultural diversity, and it was. I mean, I probably would have I mean, if I had known that it was about that, a cultural diversity class was about mainly about accepting queer people. Like that's literally what the class was about. And it was beautiful and amazing at the time, but I probably wouldn't have signed up for it if I knew that that's what the main class was going to be about.
Right.
But there was one lecture about one of the lectures was about like how you can fall in love with a soul, like a person. It doesn't have to be like a gender. And I mean, I just kind of broke down crying and I wrote a long paper about how that resonated with me so much. And there was definitely, I I always was around queer people, like all my friends were gay or and I just felt always so accepted and welcomed.
Yeah.
Like that was the one place that I finally felt like I fit in somewhere. And there was definitely like some girls that I would have crushes on and I was at that point like feeling like that was something that was actually a part of who I was, but I was still so stuck in like Christian indoctrination that like I called my mom and told her about it and she like put me in counseling and I moved home. I even moved home. And then the next semester I was in another class that was kind of the same teacher and it wasn't quite as liberal, but it still was. And I talked a lot about being a Christian while I was there. And like my other friends that were in that class, they were like, we know that you are queer and but you're also it seems hypocritical the way that you're like always talking about Christianity. And at that point I just wasn't ready to come out. And
Right.
I I lost those friends. I literally lost those friends because I didn't come out. Like they're like, we can't be friends with you because you're not living authentically. And I mean, that broke my
Yeah.
heart because I was like, wow, like you hear of people not being your friends because you are gay, but not the opposite. Like, sorry that you're not gonna become you're not gonna be out of the closet, so we're not gonna be your friend. So that was really hard for me, and it felt like, well, these are the first people that actually accepted me and I felt like myself with, and now I can't be. So it was only about a year later that I did end up just getting married and I just dove straight into religion. But I, in the back of my mind, was never attracted to my ex. Like I just was filling the boxes of like what a good Christian person is supposed to do, having my
Yeah.
kids, being the good wife, the stay-at-home mom. I was a worship leader at church and but in the back of my mind like I was literally praying every day to not have attraction for women. It was like I can pray this away like for 20 years.
Yeah. And sorry, I just think that that's really hard. Wow, that's just really, really hard.
It was really hard.
When you are so young, kind of going through this time, and the people that you do know that you are talking to that have made you feel that type of acceptance and now they leave, what was your thought process right there in that time frame as far as like, who do you express yourself to? How are you communicating? How are you just expressing your feelings in general in that time frame?
I mean, I was really depressed and also thought that you can pray your depression away. Like if you're really trusting God, then you're not going to be depressed. So I didn't talk to anyone. I've had a very lonely life. Like I have not had authentic friendships. I don't have closeness with my family. It was it was really hard. Like even my relationship with my
Yeah.
ex was horrible. I didn't have like a safe place to communicate with him. It wasn't until probably 2 years before I got divorced that I started doing therapy. But in that process of that 20-year marriage, I had really bad friendships. Like I would try so hard to have these like authentic friendships with Christian people, and they were terrible. I mean, they seemed good for a while, but they ended up being
Hmm.
like really terrible women. So then I
Yeah.
like don't trust people, and so I don't want to open up to people. I don't feel like I can be my authentic self. I did a lot of journaling, and it
Yeah.
was lonely. It was just lonely. It really was. It was extremely lonely. And I've been on a lot of antidepressants and anxiety meds over the years because of it.
Yeah, and I'm sure like the first time you go to any kind of therapy or anything, they're going to automatically try to put you on some kind of antidepressant or whatever versus really trying to find out what the core issues are, which I find to
For
be
sure.
pretty shocking just in general that we go through these types of things where really you were just suppressing your personal feelings for so long that that's what's creating the depression. So like the pills are not going to help that
Yeah,
because you're still on the pill suppressing the same issues. So it's not really solving a
right.
problem.
You're not dealing with anything.
Yeah.
So
That's
true.
like coping with alcohol or something like that. When you're done being drunk, you're going to still be in the same issues that you're in.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So in your journey of getting married, you start a family. In that time frame of being in church, starting a family, kind of going through all of these, I would say like routine processes, right? Because at that point you're probably on autopilot, just kind of going through life.
Yeah.
What, if anything, in those years did you kind of do to help your own like thought process and to help you kind of come out, even if it's for a few moments of joy and things like that? What was your kind of like outlets in that time frame?
Actually, I got really into exercising and running. I started running marathons and half marathons, and I was going to like weightlifting classes all the time. I did a ton of self-help, like I did an absolute ton of self-help books and reading, and I actually like the person that I was when I got married and the person I am now is so completely different because I did a ton of work. And I feel like really proud of myself because I saw who I was and I didn't like who I was. I felt like I was really, I really was a lazy person. I used food to cope. I didn't have good friendships. And I just looked at myself and I thought, I don't like anything about myself. And I decided to make the changes. Like I literally hadn't even ran 1 mile in my whole life. And I was like, I'm going to start running, and I did like a couch to 5K program. And then I just kind of like, okay, I did a 5K, I'm going to do a 10K. Okay, I'll do a 5 miles. Okay, now I'm going to do a half marathon. And I just like did that. And like while I was running, I would listen to self-help books, and I just literally changed who I am. And I grew so much that I outgrew my marriage because he is literally the exact same person that he was when we met, still to this day. So it's like I grew and grew and grew, and it just became to the point where I could not deny myself anymore. Like I would
Right.
pray that he would cheat on me because I felt like if he cheated on me, then I would be able to get divorced. Or I honestly prayed. I knew that I was like, well, I'll probably live longer than him because I'm healthy. So then one day I'll have happiness. And it was like, I can't live
Yeah.
like that anymore. I have got to live for myself. I don't want to hope that one day my husband dies so that I can be a lesbian. Like, I just can't do that anymore.
Yeah, no, and I think that that makes total sense in the concepts of like just, in any relationship, when you truly work on yourself, if as a relationship, we're not working at getting both better in life in general, right? Eventually somebody will outgrow the other and it's gonna
Yeah, you
create
outgrow each
friction and
other.
create issues. Yeah.
Totally.
So your journey kind of early on in life is kind of crazy, with getting married and all of that, and being so deep into church. Before you got married, was he like the first man you were in like a serious relationship with, or was there other men that you had started talking to
Oh yeah.
before that? One and
No,
done.
I feel like yeah, I was really an awkward kid. Like I didn't have boyfriends. I wasn't really
Yeah.
interested in that. And I also just felt like I mean, I really looked like a lesbian. I didn't have like men trying to hit on me at all. Like so
Yeah.
I honestly like it's so stupid, but I grew out my hair for the first time because I'd always had really short pixie cut. And then I met him and it was like the first person who ever gave me attention and it was just like, okay, I guess this will do. Like obviously I was
Yeah.
really young and I was very attention seeking and insecure and I was very needy. So it was like, okay. And I honestly like I met him during a time where I was kind of rebelling in my faith, and I met him at a bar and like I was drunk. You know, like that's pretty, it was like a very 6 month um period of my life when I was rebelling, and he is a total
Yeah.
alcoholic. So I met this like bad boy, and he was nothing like anybody I ever would have wanted to date. And we moved in together really quick and moved really fast. And then I felt like I was sinning. I was like, oh my God, I'm sinning, like moving, living with this person. We got to get married. Because, or like if I hadn't been a Christian, I never would have married him because wouldn't have felt like I was sinning.
Right.
I would have been like, oh, we're going to break up because I don't want to be with someone like this. But I was a Christian that felt like, oh, I got to get married because we're living in sin.
Right. And when did you um finally like come to the realization that like living for all of like these particular religious portions was just not it? Like when did you kind of start getting yourself to, I don't want to say like wake up out of like the storyline, but like when did you kind of open up your eyes and say, "Hey, I'm not living for me." So like when did that time frame,
Yeah,
because I'm sure, I'm sure it wasn't, you know, 2 months before you came out that you and got divorced that you
right.
did that. So
No, it
like
was
when did that
definitely a
time frame
process.
start?
Probably a year before I got divorced, we started a business together, and we were doing woodworking, and it was really beautiful. We like the things that we were making were very cool. He's a really talented carpenter, and I have like a good eye for design. So we started this business and it blew up. Like we were extremely busy and it was insane. But during that business, he was horrible to me. He was just, ugh, I just get sick thinking about how he treated me. And
Yeah.
I started having panic attacks. Like I literally could not breathe. And I was like, what's happening? Like, this is not the life I want. And I just woke up one day and I was done. Like, I had been making a plan, like, okay, when my older kids are out of high school, I can get divorced. And then I was like, okay, oh, I can't make it that long. It was only like 2 years, but I was like, I can't make it that long. I'm going to get divorced after summer. And then I couldn't even make it that long. I was like, I'm getting divorced next month. Like, I'm just so done. And so it went quick. Like once I was done, I was done. I was just like, nope,
Yeah.
this is not my values to be treated this way, and I am done. So it was probably 6 months later that we were divorced, and I had bought my own home, and I was just processing like so much, but I really started thinking about my faith. And I started thinking about how, wow, if I wasn't a Christian, I never would have married him. I never would have like I would literally in college gone to that class and been like, oh yeah, I'm a lesbian, and I would have had a totally different path if it wasn't for religion. And even just like my whole life had been all about pleasing my parents because of religion. So I was like, I was in therapy talking to her about how I felt like a little kid that can't disappoint their parents. Like I couldn't get divorced because I didn't want to let my parents down. I couldn't do all these things, but it's all
Yeah.
because of religion. And honestly, I was watching TikToks about people deconstructing their faith, and just the whole concept of this dad figure in the sky that's going to send you to hell if you don't do what he says. I was like, that's just not loving. How is that loving? I would never tell
Right.
my kids, if you don't do exactly what I want, I'm going to make you burn. So it just clicked in my head. Like, what am I teaching my children? What am I, what
Right.
have my parents been teaching me my whole life? And I just couldn't do it anymore. And honestly, like the biggest problem I had had with religion and my faith for my whole life had been the treatment towards gay people. And I was like, that doesn't sit right with me anymore. I do not think that's a sin. And
Right.
so I feel like it was about the first year of my divorce where I just really started breaking down what I actually believed and realizing like, wow, I have been brainwashed. Like I really have been brainwashed. And like my whole life has been under this control of an invisible creature, a creation that means nothing. And like all the choices I've ever made in my life have been out of brainwashing and control. So like I even
Yeah.
like sat down with my parents and told them like I was like I don't believe this. Like and I'm at this point in my life of being 44 years old that I literally cannot be inauthentic. I cannot please people or do things based on what's going to make someone proud of me anymore.
Right. And I think that that makes so much sense for the fact that you have already spent so many years of your life and your youth, living for someone else. It only takes
Yeah.
so much time before you can't live for other people. You've got to do it for you and enjoy the
Yeah.
time that you have. Uh,
Yeah.
so I can definitely see that. And when it comes to religion, I think with me personally, religion has been a roller coaster in my life, from being a kid to going to church to going to different churches. There was a time where I had went to many different types of churches to see if it's just maybe, oh, maybe I just don't like this church, maybe it's a different church or whatever. And
Yeah.
my biggest things is that, like, anytime I ever sat through a mass or any kind of like church meeting, when I left, I always felt like I left with like questions. Like, so you're telling me that this random person's going to come down to earth and only take some people but leave the other people behind to die? That's kind of weird,
Yeah.
considering didn't that
It's not
person create
loving.
all the people? Like, how are we leaving
Yeah.
some people behind
Exactly.
but taking other people? Like, that doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense to me. Or, like, even the smallest things of like going to church and feeling like if you don't put money in that basket, everybody's looking at you crazy. And that always
Oh,
made
yeah.
me
That's a big
another,
one.
like, it's so weird to me that like you really feel the need to give money to this church. And then some churches I went to, I would like leave the church and like the pastor parking spot has a Mercedes Benz and everybody else has like a broke down car.
Totally.
And I'm like, this makes
Yes.
zero sense. Everybody,
That doesn't make sense.
this guy's over here jump starting his car in the back of the parking lot, but the pastor has a
Totally.
Mercedes. What's going on here?
Yeah. Where you said that you had questions, that triggered something for me because I literally was not allowed to ask questions. And if I asked questions, my parents would act like I was annoying them or bothering them, or like, you just have to trust. You just have to have faith. And like, no answers were ever given. So I really learned not to ask questions. Like, I'm actually not good at asking questions. And it's something I have to work on because no one has ever validated me in asking questions. Like I'm just annoying to ask questions. So that was a big one for me too. I was like, I am 40 years old and like afraid to ask questions. Like that is brainwashing. That's
Yeah,
crazy. Like
that is
I
crazy.
feel like if something is so true to you and so real, then you should want people to ask questions. Like it should not bother you at all.
Correct. And I think that's the thing, though, is that a majority of the questions you're going to ask, they don't have answers for.
Right.
So
You
when
just
they
have to
know
have
that they
faith.
don't have
Like,
an answer,
okay.
yeah, that's a shot in the dark, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always been a roller coaster for me. And, I think what I've learned is that most people want to believe that there's something bigger than they are, and want to believe that there's something else. I think there's so many people that have a fear of death itself, like the idea of dying and like
Yeah.
what's next. And being a queer person, I feel like you kind of learn that like people as a whole are very afraid of stuff that they have no idea about. So when it
For
comes
sure.
to death, people are terrified of death. And I think that knowing that you have this, higher being that is going to take you somewhere and all of this stuff, I think gives people like that peace of mind of like them kind of knowing
Yeah.
something. But when you challenge it, that brings up fear again. And they're like, oh, I don't know how to answer that. And I don't want to answer that
And those
because
things are
we don't know.
fine. Like there's nothing wrong with needing a sense of peace and purpose but it's when you
Right.
use that to control people. That's the problem.
or or to hurt other people, right? Like, I think that was my biggest thing
Mhm.
also for me personally with religion, is you're telling me that like God is going to love me and blah, 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 blah. But then in the same breath, if you don't do one of these 45,000 lists of things, if you do any of those, he's not going to love you anymore. But if you don't do
Right.
anything that's in the
Yeah,
book,
that's so
then
much
it's
pressure.
fine. I'm like, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
It's
lot.
definitely a journey. It's definitely a
Yeah.
crazy journey. So, what was your relationship with your parents like going through these changes? Like, how did you manage conversations? And where are you guys at now?
Um, my parents and I feel like our relationship was good as long as I was doing the things that they thought I should be doing. And like when I was married and being the stay-at-home mom, I felt like we had closeness, but now when I like look back, it wasn't authentic at all. It was just very surface level, and basically we just talked about church, God and God. And so once I got divorced, that definitely it feels like there was a wall that was put up because they didn't know how to talk to me anymore because I disappointed
Yeah,
them. And I mean they wouldn't say that I disappointed them, but your actions show that.
you can tell. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's obvious. So I feel like honestly, it was way harder for them for me to leave that faith. And I mean, I could have probably pretended like I was still a Christian, but I just can't do that. I just cannot. So, I mean, we've had a couple of difficult conversations where I asked them to stop like giving me religious books to read, or I asked, like, my mom always has to include Bible verses on everything she sends me. And I don't, I'm asking her to stop doing that. Um, but we don't have good communication. It was just recently that, like on Facebook, I ended up like removing my family from my friends list because like they literally cannot like anything that I post that's about like me and my relationship. Like it seems
Yeah.
very intentional that you can click like on, you know, a recipe that I post, but you can't click like on a really happy picture of me and my partner. So I don't want that in my life. And yeah, that was hurtful to them, but it's hurtful to me as well. And we can try to have a relationship outside of Facebook. Like to me, that doesn't seem like that should be so hard. But my
Right.
family's not good at communicating in at all anyway. So as long as things are surface level, we just pretend that there's nothing hard going on, then they're fine. But it's not the kind of relationship that I want in my life.
And I definitely can see that. I mean, there's so many people that would prefer to live on that like real fake surface level type of thing instead of just having
Yeah,
real conversations. And I think that that's really where it becomes really difficult is because especially like when it comes to family, I think there's two things. One, people are so afraid to cut people off. I think that's like one thing
yeah,
in general. There's a lot of my family I don't talk to, and it's because I'm gay as hell. I'm gonna be gayer than gay,
yeah,
and you're
yeah,
not gonna refer to my boyfriend as my friend or as any of these random terms that people use. This is my boyfriend. This is my significant other. This is my
exactly.
partner, and I'm very strict
Yeah,
on those types of things. So like I have learned to have no problem cutting people off, but I think that that's really really hard for a lot of people. So I think that's one thing. The
yeah,
other thing that come to learn is that when it comes to your parents, they're battling in their own brains like I genuinely love this person because I gave birth to this person and this person is a part of me. But at the same time, my religion is telling me that I shouldn't love this person, right? So I think like they
exactly.
have like such a hard complex to kind of build between those two things. And unfortunately, a lot of the boomer generation that have
Yeah,
spent so much time in the church, when you're in the church for 40, 50, 60 years, it is
Yeah.
very hard to kind of change that thought process. So I can see
Well,
where
and
kind
you
of like
like
those
you
two sides
literally
battle.
don't think that your child's happiness is actually important. Like if I ask my mom, "Don't you like seeing me happy and in a loving relationship?" Actually, no. No, she doesn't because to her that's sinning and God and like following God is way more important than your happiness. And
And
it's
that's
just something
wild.
that I'm still their process. I know it is, but like that's I feel like that's how I live my life too. Like I knew I couldn't pursue my own happiness like because I was trying to pursue God. Like you don't get to do both.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it's so difficult. It's just hard to kind of get through those phases. Um, so how has your relationship grown and changed with your kids overall going through kind of this time now?
Um, well, for one, I feel like I saw the church hurting them, like the way that it had hurt me. So, but like my daughter was having her own mental health problems and things like that, and I saw that it was like because of how I was raising her in the church. So when they were like the main catalyst for me to start questioning my faith because I was like, wow, I'm doing the exact same thing that my parents did to me. Like I always swore I would not do that, and here I am doing it. So I feel like we have like grown a lot, the three of us, just because I mean, my kids are with me 24/7 and like
Yeah.
the divorce was the divorce was like I guess I mean every divorce is going to be hard on kids, but the life that we created is so much more peaceful and they feel like they can talk to me. Like I definitely feel like they can be themselves. Um I feel like they're proud of me. They're teenagers, so it's
Yeah.
they're still their teenagey self.
I think as teenagers, it's kind of a journey, right? Because they're still figuring out who they are. They're still figuring out themselves.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
applaud you for being a parent and kind of taking those moments to yourself and really kind of figuring out who you are, and staying true to that. Because I think it is extremely inspiring to me for people in general to live authentically who they are and be who they feel like they need to be because so many
Yeah.
people hide it for so long and just stay closeted. And it's really unfortunate the amount of people, especially for me, like I worked really with seniors for a while, and going to some of these like senior communities and meeting some of the men that were like closeted gay men that are now
Oh
70 in
yeah.
this senior home and they've been
Oh.
closeted their whole lives, waiting for their spouses to die. And like being able to
Oh my
like
gosh,
see
that's so
some of
sad.
them finally like be themselves. I remember walking into this one guy's apartment. Um, his entire apartment was like a shrine to Madonna. And
Oh.
he had one photo of his wife next to his like nightstand next to his bed, but the rest of the apartment was just Madonna. And I remember like walking in and like looking around like this is what is going on here? Why are we in a
Yeah,
Madonna
that's
fan page?
amazing.
uh, and
That's
being able to
hilarious.
kind of just sit and talk to him and like listen to his story and like the fact that like he went into the military really young. He then got married while he was enlisted because his parents said that he needed to marry somebody so that if anything was to happen to him while he was away, like everything that he had would go to this woman and that would be the mother of his
Wow.
children. And all of this like really like driving him to create this family almost. He had
Yeah.
kids and stuff, but it was just amazing to see like somebody who suffered for so long finally living authentically themselves. It was almost
Yeah.
freeing. I felt like I walked in and like his actual age, he was 71, 72, something like that around there, But when you talk to him and the way he acted and
That's
everything, he was like
crazy.
21 because it was
Yeah,
him living
yeah.
authentically himself for like the first
He'd
time
been
ever,
waiting for that for sure.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So it's just amazing. So seeing people kind of just live authentically is really inspiring for me. So I just, congratulations on getting this far and
Thank
living
you.
more you. I think it's so important.
Yeah, and I feel like obviously those years of my life, I wouldn't change them because like I literally am
Right.
who I am because of those hard things that I went through. And I'm so glad I have my kids and like I love the person that I am now. So obviously, you know, I can't have regrets. Like I'm really glad that now I get to live my authentic life. I'm so thankful.
Yeah, and I think that that's huge because it's not necessarily, and this is for anybody listening, it's not necessarily that you have to regret or be upset about kind of the things that you have had to
Yeah,
go through. It's a part of like becoming who you ultimately are and finding yourself. I think that there's so many
yeah,
different paths and avenues that people can take to learn how to be authentically themselves and to really dive into who you are as an individual. But everybody's path is different. Every step you take is a little different. Where you
yeah,
are born, you're already kind of starting off with a different footprint. I feel like if you're queer and you were born in the middle of New York City, of Manhattan, you're probably gonna have some different steps you can take for then,
for
being
sure.
born in the middle of Arkansas or something.
Or Idaho.
Or Idaho, exactly. Um,
Yeah, it's pretty bad here.
so living in Idaho now and being a part of the queer community, how do you feel it has changed as a community over the years that you have lived there?
Well, I mean, it's changed a ton. When I was in college, the Aryan Nations had like a camp up around like probably 30 minutes from where I live now. And there was like white pride parades here. And it was really terrible. There's a lot of racism here. So, I mean, that compound is gone now, but there's still traces of those people here. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of there's a it can be pretty bad. Like there's a lot of Trumpers here and um I mean we just had like our Pride event and the local churches. Oh, this is pretty cool actually. One of the local pastors like put out this call to his church group or whatever to write letters to the editor like protesting Pride. Well, our like local Pride Alliance, they got a fundraiser started for them for everybody to donate in the name of this pastor, and they've raised so far over $7,000. And every time that somebody makes a donation, the pastor gets like an email and a card in the mail. And he's now like the premier donor for Pride. More donations have come in his name ever from anyone. So I feel like that shows a lot that the community is like,
Yeah,
no, we're not taking this. We're going to fight back because we are here. Like I have like a pride flag on my, you know, outside on my house. And I feel like
yeah,
a few years ago that would have been not safe to do. And maybe I'm getting in a little flag war with my neighbor because they've got their Trump flag, but I'll fight back. I get all kinds of flags going on. But I definitely feel like, you know, it's just a battle. Like there's always
yeah,
going to be people in this area that think we need to go away. And they like they're always like, "Oh, you're from California, move away. Like get out of here." I'm like, "I literally have lived here forever, so you cannot say that to me." Like there are liberal gay people that have lived here forever. You're
right.
not going to make us
And
leave.
we'll continue. And we'll continue to live there and
Yeah,
have lived in a lot of these cities.
exactly.
And I think it is amazing how a community can come together and make change. I think that that is
Yeah,
amazing. And for everybody listening in the
it's so
podcast,
cool.
please encourage people to do this type of stuff because this is what makes people talk. And
Yeah,
I'm
that
pretty
makes an
sure that that
impact.
pastor that pastor's going wild.
For sure, 100%. Yeah, it
He
was pretty
probably
cool. It's
can't
an
raise that much.
awesome way to make an impact.
Yeah, he probably can't raise that much money at the church in that amount of time.
Exactly, exactly. I feel like it was $5,000 in 24 hours. Like it happened really fast.
That's perfect. That's the way we
It's
need to
cool.
make things happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Now that you have officially been living authentically you and really have a better grasp on you as an individual, what would you tell somebody that is you right before you got divorced?
I mean, I would say this is your time. Like you put yourself on the back burner for so long, and like it's gonna kill you. Like you have to be yourself. You have to be authentic. Like I always kind of prided myself in being like a really vulnerable person, and but if you're denying yourself in any way, then that's not vulnerable. And like it's okay if like it felt selfish to me, and I would tell myself it's okay to be selfish,
Definitely. Yeah,
even though it's
definitely
not selfish. But I
is.
felt like, oh, this is like the most selfish thing I've ever done, and I just got to do it.
Yeah, it's definitely not selfish at all to live
Yeah,
authentically yourself.
I know.
Um,
Yeah.
what what tools or resources do you think that you would have given or told that person during that time to use?
Um. Well, I mean, honestly, TikTok was a huge one for me to find support and to find like help with deconstruction, especially. I feel like leaving the church was way harder than getting divorced because I lost community, I lost all my friends, I lost my family, all because I left my faith. That was even before I came out. So, I mean, there are support groups and things like that out there, but I mean, it was really hard for me to make time for that with my kids. So, for me to find a community on TikTok and even like some Facebook groups, like I found this liberal ladies Facebook group from my local town, and that was huge for me. They were so supportive and so kind. And yeah, those were the best things for me as a stay at home, thus, as a single mom with limited access to free time. Things
Mhm.
online were huge for me.
Yeah, definitely using online resources to kind of help find community. The biggest thing that I've learned over doing this podcast and just in life and kind of talking to different people as I've kind of grown up is that community is really what people are looking for, right? It's like, how do I find people that I can
Yeah,
relate to, that I can talk to, that I can express myself around, and feel accepted? And I think that being able to find something like that in any stage of the process of understanding who you are and how to live authentically you is part of the journey, and it's not easy. I will say
yeah,
that it's not easy to find community,
so true.
but definitely not
Yeah,
not being afraid to like reach out and go try. It's kind of like dating in a sense. You've got to try, because if you don't,
yeah,
you're never
it
gonna.
for sure is.
Now,
That's so
another
true.
question that I like to ask a lot of people is if you could go back in history and talk to your 15-year-old self and give yourself advice, what would that be?
Oh man, I would literally tell myself that I was gay. I would just say it's okay. Like maybe right now it seems like that's an impossible thing, but you're gonna have the ability to do that in the future. Like it's okay. Like I would 100% tell myself that.
That is awesome. So many people have like different ideas of like what to say in that time frame. And I love it. You're like, girl, you're gay. Just,
I just
just
can't,
accept
I
it.
just can't. Like it's okay. I mean, I was just like in this little teeny tiny small town, but I had all kinds of like all my guy friends, they're all gay now. Like it was definitely like happening. It was like
Yeah.
I was very attracted to these people. And for 20 years of my life, I wrestled with that. So I just would tell myself that it just can't do it.
Yeah, and you were already surrounded by all the queers, so you were already
I know,
almost
I
there.
was. I know.
That is so funny. When you were officially coming out to be yourself, what was that process like of like officially coming out? Was it something that like you waited until you got into a relationship to post pictures and like that's how people found out? Or was it like I hung a pride flag outside and that was a wrap?
Well, I mean, I came out to my kids first, and then like I posted in my like private Facebook group with my liberal friends and shared my story there. And then I mean, I started like when I was on some dating sites and saying that I was interested in women, but I wasn't ready to like be fully out yet. So I didn't feel like I could go on dates with women because I didn't want to do that, like being inauthentic. Like, here's these people who are already out and living their authentic life. I didn't think it was fair for me to be like, oh, well, I can go on dates with you, but I'm still in the closet. So, um, I mean, a big part for me was when I started hanging out with my now partner, my girlfriend now. Like, she's obviously a lesbian, and I like we started as friends and we were hanging out as friends, but I knew like this was somebody that I could see myself with, and I had to be like authentic. And that's when I was like called my parents. Like I called them on the phone and was like, um I'm not straight. Like I want to date women, and I just want you to know that. And then yeah, I just obviously we were still just friends, but people assumed that we were dating because we were posting lots of pictures together and things like that. But that's really how it
Mhm.
happened for me until we actually were dating. But I just did not
Yeah.
want to be dating people and not be fully out as who I am.
No, I think that makes
I'd
total
say it was like
sense
a
in
three
the
months
total
process.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense in making sure that like you're ready. You know what I mean? You're ready for like what
Yeah.
comes. Because I also
Well, I wanted to be
find, and
fair to other people.
yeah, and I also find that like with people coming out, there's good in coming out because your community, the people that you've been around, your friends are going to stand with you and they're going to encourage you. But there's also like the negatives of coming out and like there's hate and things that people post online and stuff like that. So it's really kind of being ready for both sides of that. I think is really important because a lot of people can like be put into like depression or a spiral of like not
Yeah.
knowing how to deal with like negative comments and things like that. It can be really hard, especially if you're not sure who's on your Facebook as your friend group, and what they might post,
True.
is really big.
Yeah.
I know for me personally, um, the moment you post something crazy, I am unfriending you. That's kind
A
of how
hundred
I
percent. Yeah.
feel.
I've actually I my friend list has gone from like 1,700 people to 600 because I just can't do it. I'm just like, bye, bye, bye. Like, I'm not actually friends with you. Bye. Like, everybody, oh, that post is actually completely disgusting. Goodbye. Like, aunts, cousins, like, I don't care. And, but I honestly have to say that I have been surprised by how sweet and supportive so many people have been. Like, I
Yeah.
was really surprised by just a lot of friends being like, we don't care, we love you so much. And just growing up in this North Idaho community, that was surprising to me, but it was beautiful and so awesome. And I've just really seen some a lot of growth that's happened here because of it. Like people that I went to high school with, just messaging me out of the blue, like, I just want you to know I'm so happy for you. Like, it's been really cool.
Yeah. I think definitely the good outweighs the bad. And people need to remember
A
that,
hundred percent.
in the long run.
Yeah. And I don't want those
What do
kind of
you
people in my life anyway, so it's fine.
Right. So true. So true. What do you think helped you kind of get to this point of being able to like, you know, cut those people off of Facebook and just unfriend them and like keep true to like your core beliefs? What do you think like is really helping you get to that from people pleasing?
Oh gosh, I think a huge part of it has to do with just my age and like at 44 years old, I just cannot mess around with that. Like I feel like I people pleased and cared what people thought for so many years that I like literally dictated my life based on that. I just cannot anymore. Like I just cannot. I don't have time for that at all. I have done that for way too many
Yeah,
years. And thankfully, like I have been in a lot of therapy that has helped me like feel good about who I am and like I don't need to people please. Like I don't need
right.
to have people's opinion matter. So that has helped a lot.
Yeah. And that's awesome because not many people realize that like you're not going to get a book that you're going to read that's just going to make you finish reading it and tell you tomorrow that like now you're cured and can cut people off and all of this stuff. I think it's a point of
Totally.
just not wanting to put up with it anymore. Like you get to the point where you're just
Yeah.
fed up. It's enough's enough and I just can't
I
accept any
just
more
don't
of it.
care.
Yeah.
Right.
That is a beautiful thing to get to a point where like I just genuinely don't care. I just don't care what other people think.
Yes, it does feel really good. Yeah, it feels really good.
Do you find that like now when you are doing things that you enjoy, are you enjoying life better? Like,
For sure. I I mean, I think a part of my marriage that was really hard for me was that like we did the things that he wanted to do. Like I didn't, oh, the things that I wanted to do, I did by myself. And that's fine. Like I don't care, like whatever. But now I have like a partner that I get to do those fun things with. And we like love so many of the same things together. And like that's so much fun. I've never had that before. Like every concert I ever went to with my ex was a concert that he wanted to go to, and I hated it. And I was the designated driver, and it was just like this is the lamest life. So now it's just like the things that I love to do, I don't have to do them alone.
yeah.
I get to have like so much fun with my best friend, and I like it's beautiful. It's amazing.
I love that. The one thing I have said multiple times on this podcast, and people will kind of probably hear me say this a million more times the more we talk about just like love and relationships and stuff like that, is, you have to be compatible with somebody. Like it has to be worth being a
Yeah,
part of, having fun. Like, if you are always sad and depressed and feel like keeping this relationship is almost like another job, this is not a good relationship, and we
yeah,
need to move on to bigger and better things.
totally. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing so much of your story today. I think it is so inspirational and has really even opened up my eyes to a version of being queer that I haven't personally encountered. And I think it's really great to help inspire a bunch of other people. But to end this episode, the only way we know how here at Girl Bye, who would you officially like to say Girl Bye to?
I'm gonna say girl bye to JH, crossing my boundaries and just disrespecting me for years and years and years. And yeah, girl, bye.
GirlBye. It is so great to watch people be able to kind of just lift and let stuff go. And I think it is so important for us as a community to not hold on to things that we shouldn't be. Especially, for me, I think as being queer, for most of us, there's a lot of stuff we carry when it comes to family, friends, things like that. So learning how to like let that go and live freely is just so hard, but so worth it in the long run.
Yeah, for sure.
So, any other advice or anything you would like to give people before we wrap? Anything else you want to mention?
I just feel like it's so important to be yourself and authentic, and especially if you're in the religious community, just to really do some, some put some thought behind what you actually believe. And it's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to deconstruct that.
Yeah, I will piggyback on that. Ask questions. Ask as many questions
Yeah.
as you can. Don't be afraid to ask a question. I think that is something that is almost, it could be considered abusive to be forced to not ask a question. I feel like asking questions is how
Yeah,
we
for
learn,
sure.
how we grow, how we develop. You've got to ask questions and question everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on GirlBye today. I was so happy to have you with us and sharing your journey in being queer. To everybody listening, thank you for joining us every week. We'll bring you a new episode every Monday at 6 p.m. And don't ever forget to turn on the bells and all the whistles so that you know that our video posted. And we'll catch you on the next one.
GirlBye.
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 Bye.
Bye, GirlBye.